yeah, I wonder if more people again can take stock from Lewis Capaldi's team
Yeah.
on
And
that.
see how well that's working for everybody involved. One thing that I thought was really good from like from a documentary making standpoint, like editorially, was they opened the documentary with the Lewis Capaldi, or this artist has sold 10 million singles or whatever it was, and then I think it was about half an hour from the end, so about an hour into the documentary, maybe a little bit over, they shoot that, like they show the footage of that interview. And what I thought was really interesting was when you hear it at the start, you just think it's a regular old interview where they're describing all his accolades and how amazing he is as an artist. And then as you go on, you actually get to see the interview and the context that all this was being said, and also what he had been going through at the time, because that was when his tics became visible. And I think the build up to that was was a really nice touch, because when you hear it, you just hear it as points. When you see it, it's like he was going through something at the time during all this, but I don't think he had even been diagnosed with Tourette's yet. And I
Yeah,
just, from an editorial standpoint, I thought that was a really good idea. I really liked that.
yeah, that's I hadn't picked up on that initially, and now how you said it, yeah, it's quite a poignant little moment,
Mm.
isn't it? I think the whole
'Cause
thing's been very cleverly edited like that.
Yeah, because at first I was just like, when I started to hear it again, I was just like, oh, that's weird that they're reusing a sound bite that they used to open it.
Yeah,
And then because it doesn't open with him on the like in the interview, it's him behind like backstage before he goes out. And then I was just like, oh, they're going to show the interview. And even still, I was just like, that's odd. And then it kind of all clicked. I was like, oh, that's really clever.
yeah, yeah, and it kind of put all of that in perspective. Is like, what's it worth if you haven't got your health?
Exactly.
It's worth nothing, is it?
Exactly. Sure, the whole like the cliche of oh, your health is your wealth, but it's true.
It bloody is, yeah. You
You
know,
can't do anything like
no, and it doesn't matter if you're on the smallest level of any industry to the highest level of any industry. If you're unable to do that at that, you it's all worthless. And in fact, actually, I remember there's a really good quote from Steve Jobs
Mhm.
before he died, and he said, "I'm the richest man in the world, and I can't buy another second."
Yeah, I've heard that before, and
Yeah.
it's very profound.
Mm. Yeah, immensely. And you just think like, yeah, it's all bollocks, isn't it,
Yeah.
really, when it comes down to the crunch on that. And you just think, yeah. And I think I really want to applaud um not only Lewis and his family, but dare I say it, Netflix and the editing team around all of it, because they
Yeah.
it's been none of it comes across contrived, and none of
No.
it comes across like, oh, we're going to put this in because this is going to help sell records.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it was intended as a kind of, let's follow him over
Yeah.
making the next record.
Yeah.
Like that's obviously what the premise of the whole thing was.
Yeah.
Let's follow this journey. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And little did they know what was
What was going
going
to
to
happen?
unfold on it. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
And even because like I'd obviously heard that he had Tourette's, but because I don't like I hadn't kept up with any of his doings, I just thought it was he'd known for a long time and it was something that he kept out of the spotlight, which was obviously his right to do. I
mm,
didn't realize that he had gotten diagnosed during the filming of that and so recently, because I'd seen him talking to Billie Eilish and they've like become friends over it and shared their experiences, which is amazing.
mm,
But that, while also having the pressure of creating your second album needing to be a massive hit, and then dealing with this diagnosis, which on one hand must have been such a relief because he says he's like, oh, I'm not dying, like it's not a brain
yeah,
tumor, like, but
Yeah.
also it's like, okay, so this is something that at least there was treatments that seem to be working for him. But that much, like, I can't even imagine the shift in mental pressure that must have taken as well. It's like,
Oh
okay,
God.
right, I have my diagnosis. Okay, now what? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I was also thinking, just as you were saying that, it reminds me a bit of some of the things that Lee Baxter from Caught in the Act,
mm,
a boy band from the 90s, I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago.
yeah,
Everyone should go and watch that interview. It's bloody amazing.
yeah.
Um, yeah, when there was a point in it when we were talking about child stars, and we were talking about, especially in the world in the pop music world, which I find, I've latched onto this as well because I find the pop industry immensely fascinating. You know, um, the
It's a
reason
world
why
on
is,
its own, like,
yeah, totally. I got well into it because back in 2006 and 2007, um, it was cool to have pop singers with rock guitar players.
yeah,
So that was kind of like my gig, as I wanted to be a session guy. So
yeah,
that's what I did, and that's what I did that for ages, just
cool.
playing for artists I could, or was that archetype guy for people that were having auditions in front of like Sony and
Wow.
Warner's and Universal and stuff like that. So yeah, I never managed to get anything big or decent.
Yeah.
But I got to play in front of all those people and be like that token rock guitar player with that
That's
stuff.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and even at this tiny level of playing like a 500 um cap club night, which was all just for pop industry people. It was like no fans. It was all just industry people I did. And I remember looking at it a few times and just go, this world is bizarre. Like the pop side of things just seems everything. It's like this. It's just all blown out of proportion in some
Yeah.
areas. Like it's just stuff that you wouldn't even think, like a makeup artist for a makeup artist or something. Like everything's got, like all this
Yeah.
other, just mad stuff.
God.
And like the level of proficiency that they want is just
Mm.
like, there's something to be said for like, it's rock and roll, leave it. And then
Yeah.
there's something for the pop world of just being like, and
Yeah.
I could see elements of that in the Lewis Capaldi doc, as well as hearing about it from Lee Baxter from Caught in the Act,
Yeah.
about his time, especially when he was in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And that the I, I suppose, yeah, so him and the time he broke and was like mega famous and stuff would be the same age as when Lewis was when he broke in a couple of years, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever,
Yeah.
in that early 20s thing. And he said, they had a good team where they protected the interests of those people
Mm.
so that the fandom and stuff wouldn't, it was
God.
tiring and what have you, but there was a protection layer to a degree.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we were alluding to before, Lewis has got an immense protection about it,
Mm.
family and business.
Yeah.
If you look at someone like Billie Eilish and Justin Bieber, and obviously tragically Aaron Carter, and
Yeah.
um, those type of things, and even people like Panic at the Disco to a degree, because they like hit it off big when they were like 18, 17, 18.
They
You
were
know,
babies.
yeah, they
Like,
only played like 3 gigs and then they got signed
yeah.
and then like released I Write Sins, Not Tragedies. And like, come on, man. Like, what, and then there's like bands like Silverchair that were like big at 14, 15 years old. And you just think
Yeah.
this whole thing, no wonder people have got physical and mental dispositions that happen out of through trauma or
Yeah.
stress induced or what have you, because people, there is there's a thing with all of us creatives, as you're aware, you know whatever side of the dice that you are in the industry, there is a weird, I'm going to hunt it down,
Yeah.
like a
Rat.
lion, like, yeah, like a lion to an antelope type of mentality,
Yeah.
right? you know Regardless of what it is, I'm going to
Yeah.
get it. I'll
Yeah.
fucking do whatever I can
Yeah.
to make it happen. But you never give yourself that time to kind of enjoy. the kill,
Yeah.
you know, or appreciate the work you've done in preparation to go and kill. So
Exactly.
it's like when you've come up with some just blinding journalistic pieces, even before we started to know each other and work together, or you've had some amazing success before, and your career only speaks for itself as well. There's times when you've probably gone like, right, cool, I've got here now. I need to do this next bit.
Yeah.
You you need to take stock, don't you, and think
Oh,
about
for
it.
sure. And
And
I think that's something that can be in, like you said, in any kind of creative space,
totally,
because creativity is something that can always grow and you can always improve on it.
yeah, man.
Kind of take for granted how far you've come. And like, I mean, something that you wrote or created, say, like 4 years ago, it might not be up to your own standards now, like, oh, that was crap. But 4 years ago it was good. Like, it
Yeah,
was like, and it was something that you were proud of, but you're just like, okay, I've done that now. I need to get better. I need to keep on learning and improving. But it's okay to actually appreciate how far you've come while also appreciating the work that you've created. It's okay to like the old stuff.
yeah. It's so much to be said about that, and I suppose again that also ties in with the stuff with Chester and Mike
Mm,
Shinoda from our talk with on the Meteor thing. Again, people should go and check it. It's bloody awesome. Um, yeah, there's so many similarities with it all,
mm,
and again, what fascinates me with it is that you can see. Obviously, okay, you're talking from like 90s pop world, and then you've got like singer-songwriter pop world now, and we're talking about new metal from 20 years ago. There's a
mm.
30 yeah, there's a 30-year span that we're talking about with these artists that we're mentioning here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it the mind boggles with just how it all works.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And you just think, yeah, I wonder if more people again can take stock from Lewis Capaldi's team
Yeah.
on
And
that.
see how well that's working for everybody involved. Like
Yeah,
to look at the bigger picture as well. And actually just talking about Meteora again, I thought something that was interesting that we touched on in the video was how there was like twins on Meteora and Hybrid Theory. Like you could kind of pinpoint which song sounded like the other. That came up in this documentary.
yeah, it did. Yeah,
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And because I know I can't remember the song that he was writing, but he was just like, oh, like, that sounds really similar to someone you loved. And they're just like, or someone you love. And they're just like, that's good. People love that. And he's like, do they? And I thought that was so funny
yeah.
to have it
So
appearing again in a completely different genre, but also it's like, no, no, do it. Like people will see the callback and make the connections. So I thought that was a nice little tidbit.
yeah, no, it's I thought about that too. It's great. I completely forgot about it until you reminded me. So it's brilliant you have there. Yeah, it's interesting. It's that sophomore record syndrome. Hybrid Theory to Meteora. And Lewis's first record to his new one. I think this new one's coming out May 19th, isn't it?
I think so.
So it's right around the corner. So they're hyping up to it.
Mm,
Probably why the documentary's been floating back around again
true.
on Netflix, which is why it's caught my eye and ear so well. But yeah, the similarities in that stuff again, they're incredible.
Yeah.
Like, so doing these little case studies that we do about this stuff, it's just fascinating because, again, you had the producer going, okay, so this is kind of the XYZ song from Hybrid Theory to Meteora, and then obviously Lewis was going, oh god, yeah, but I think I'm riffing off the same melody line, and everyone's like, that's great, do that, please do that, you know, and yeah, and he was like, yeah,
Okay.
all right, you sure people like that? And they were like, you've seen your you've seen your record sale numbers. I think people like that. Yeah.
And like again, I'd say that is something as a creative and as an artist that can get a lot because there are some artists and that they do an unreal first album and then they do the same thing with the second album, but it is the same thing. Like you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, like you can't say, like after a while, it's like, oh, is that song off their first or their second album? Or was that song off their third or their first album? Where they kind of just keep on recreating the same album with different words. And I'd say that might have been a fear for him, kind of like, no, no, I want to show how I've progressed. I don't want to write that song again. Even though it was amazing, I want to make it different. And their was like, yeah, it is different. It's just calling back to the other to your hit
Yeah.
single. And there is a difference between calling back to something that people love
Mm.
and recreating it nearly copy and paste with a few little changes here and there.
Yeah, totally. I think I don't know if they're making an Adele dig in the documentary about that, because
Oh,
they're talking about how many songs he's written,
mm,
and then they say, "Oh well, it's a good progression," and then he says, "But I want to do something a bit like this," which is that "Forget Me" song that
yeah.
he came out with, and they went, "Oh, no one's going to expect that," and he said, "Yeah, I just thought I was going to be writing sad songs every album for the next couple of years," and I was like, "Is that an Adele dig?"
Yeah.
You know, they're saying like, yeah, you don't want to write the same song over and over again.
That, yeah, I caught that now. I didn't even, that kind
Yeah.
of,
And I just, there's one of those little dig in there,
yeah.
but yeah.
I think maybe I internally went on the defensive. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with only writing sad songs as I look at my
Yeah.
suggested emo playlist and all the emo bands that maybe
Yeah.
have one kind of happy-ish maybe song in their entire discography.
Yeah, I
Followed
totally know what
by
I
why
mean.
it was bad to feel happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally know what you mean. I'm like that with everything I listen to. I'm just like, oh my God, this is deep. He's touching on such a different level here. And then I listen to the next song, like, just touching on a different level here. This song is, and then I've got through a record of something, and I'm like, God damn, this depressing shit makes me so happy.
I saw a meme recently and it was like, wow, do pop punk fans even try and be happy when they wake up? And I was like, ow.
Oh, yeah, that hit me in the feels, man. Yeah, yeah, it's like that with like the grunge stuff. Whenever I see people like knocking on the grunge vibe of like everything's just morose, I'm like, that morose got me through, man,
Exactly.
to happier times.
Yeah.
And I enjoy those morose
Yeah.
moments, you know. Give me more
Oh,
depressing
yeah.
masculine songs. That's the pillar of who I am, you know.
Exactly. It's what got me here today.
That's what got me here today, man.
And I'm gonna
Yeah.
continue listening.
And I'm going to continue and persevering with that too. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's amazing that there is, like you said, there's that sophomore pressure
Mm,
that we're looking at the similarities of stuff there, but also um, you can see that Lewis is trying.
mm,
Obviously, the genre he's in. Let's be let's be real here. The genre he's in is kind of pigeonholed.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
There's probably not much room to do too much,
Mhm.
especially early on. It's
Yeah.
not like
Don't
he.
scare anybody off. Like,
Yes, that's exactly it. It's not like he's got the creative freedom of someone like Kate Bush or Tori Amos.
yeah.
You know, I went on a Tori Amos binge the other day. Funny enough,
Yeah.
and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's fucking amazing!" It's like piano playing is just
She
fucking
is.
amazing. Yeah. So it was yeah, it's interesting to see that you can see there's things that he's like wanting to do or he's wanting to take influence from, but maybe he's just bagging those
Yeah.
for later on.
And I think even with like the themes that he does touch on, like say with someone you love, or I can't remember the song that he'd written for his auntie as well.
Oh
Like
fuck, man, that slayed me, dude. Fuck.
that really got me. But
Yeah,
the
that's
fact that they were kind of being not sold, but as love songs, and it's like, oh, they were about an ex or whatever. And it was only when you got the actual descriptions, like nobody was saying it was wrong. to
Yes.
like, oh, if
Yeah.
that's what people want to believe, cool. And it was
Yeah.
only when you hear the stories behind them, I was like, and then when I listened to the lyrics in that context, I was like, these are heartbreaking. Like these are so sad. And it is rare that you well no, I'm not enough into the genre to say it's rare to see those types of themes of like mental health and losing someone very young and not being able to process it correctly, like because you're so young, like you don't really understand. It was refreshing is the isn't the right word, but that also kind of creating this alley for younger artists. Like it's okay to write about these hard and heartbreaking and sad topics, and you can still have smash hits and be playing in front of like hundreds of thousands of fans. Like it's you can have both. But yeah, it was very
Yeah.
touching and very sad.
Oh God, yeah. And again, that was what we were speaking to before. Like it took that. I did not expect any of that coming at all. I didn't realize, well, any of it actually, really, the journey that you go through it, especially with that, you know, yeah, that pulled the rug from underneath my feet.
Yeah,
And again, there's similarities with the Linkin Park stuff in there,
exactly.
you know, and again with what Lee Baxter was telling me, and um, you just think there's there's just when you it's hard to lift the hood on songs sometimes because like you said, I don't know too much about this genre particularly to be able to go, oh, that's a rarity that this happens.
Yeah,
um but from, let's say, from what I do know, it feels that it's rare.
yeah. Given like the songs that we do know that are on the radio and on the
Yeah,
mainstream, it's
totally.
not.
Yeah, especially with it always really being like hip hop and R&B
Yeah,
as
exactly.
predominantly on radio and things like that, and in EDM inspired electric pop, you know. Excuse me, you know. So when you do have someone like Lewis Capaldi kind of coming in with songs that are just, you know, that they are next level, and again, you look at that and think, well, yeah, he deserves to be where he is. He's writing
Exactly. He's
fantastic.
fought for it.
Yeah, you know, and before you even get onto his vocal ability,
Mm,
which you get to see really raw
yeah.
in the documentary, fucking blew me away.
Oh, I
Just
know.
God, he's just like fucking about, you know, drinking a soda or a Coca-Cola
Yeah.
and stuff, and then like, all right, do it, and then he's just like, yeah, like just smashes into it. Like I'm like,
Effortlessly. Effortlessly.
effortlessly. I know, God.
Okay.
And he's just like fucking around. Even in between takes, he's like, hey, you know, fucking doing all that. And then
Yeah.
next minute, he's like fucking note perfect as well. Like, not only has he got the tone and
Yeah.
the phrasing and delivery, but he's not he's not having to second guess his note placement at
Yeah.
all. And it is like bang on every time. Every time he was singing parts, just like that, the consistency of how he's able to do that. You know,
Yeah.
again, I think in a genre like that, those his ability will probably get overshadowed, I think.
But
You know what I
it
mean?
was only when I kind of saw those more raw moments in the studio that I had forgotten that at the end of the day, he's not only is he an incredibly talented songwriter and musician, his vocals, man, like
God, I know.
they're just insane. And I was just like, he has it all. Because I mean, not so much in his area of like kind of the more pop industry, but on the other side, often if all you need to do is have a belting voice, and then you can have a team to help you write, like when I say help, do more of the legwork when it comes to writing and the actual production of the songs. Like all you need is to be incredibly charismatic and an incredible voice. But he's charismatic, incredible voice, amazing musician, songwriter, everything. Like
Yeah.
and still just so sound like
Yeah.
seems really
Yeah.
nice.
I know. Yeah. Um, man. Well, you know, God, I mean, I suggest everyone goes and watches it.
Mm.
And I really feel like I want to get behind this record for him,
Me too, yeah.
you know. And I was saying to my wife, it's like, I wouldn't mind going to see him live,
Yeah,
you
I'd
know,
say
actually.
I'd say it's very good live.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking some of that in and checking it out.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
just love her.
fabulous documentary. A great guy. Some incredible songwriting in there. You really get to lift the lid on him as a person and as a musician. I think
Yeah.
it's a real good eye and really well edited. And yeah, we at Riffyard Media only wish the best for Mr. Lewis Capaldi.
We do
So
indeed. And all
yeah,
his future endeavors.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
I
and
can't wait to see what made the cut.
yeah,
Did the
absolutely,
did the
yeah.
song that his parents dislike? Is that there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dedicated to them.
Is it dedicated to them? Is there some
Yeah.
like harp in there for it? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's I'm intrigued now. I think,
Mm,
and I think that's where it's also been successful there, that documentary, where I am now intrigued to find out what else is on there from what you've heard.
mm.
And just as a last thing about that, he does talk about that. He said, "This is the bit where you hear a snippet of a song," and he goes, and then what happens is all of a sudden it will cut to me
Yeah.
singing in a stadium and everyone's singing about the lyrics. He goes, and this will happen in 3, 2, 1. Well, if it didn't happen, then the song's shit and no one bought it. And I was just like, and then it cuts
It's
after
so
that.
good.
It's like even there, it's like it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure you go check it out. And Lewis's new record is going to be out on May 19th. Go and check it out. It's going to be great, I think. So, Ola, thanks very much, man.
Thank you
We'll
for having
see
me.
you next week. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you soon.
Bye.